Hello there, I'm Larry Heather. I'm the independent candidate for Calgary Heritage in this federal election on October 19th. I'm here at the Harry Hayes building, downtown Calgary. It's the federal nerve center, I guess, of the federal government in the city of Calgary. And many important decisions and departments of the federal government are contained in this building. A lot of decisions that are made in Ottawa are carried out here. So I wanted to talk to you about one particular subject in this election, and in fact in every election for the last 30 years, and that's the subject of public polling and the effect that it has on elections. And I'd like to just refer to an important book that was written back in 1989 by Claire Hoy, who was a columnist for the Toronto Sun. And he wrote the book Margin of Error. This book deals with the history of polling right from George Gallup in the 1940s, who was a Canadian, right up to the current day, and the effect and the science of it, and the effect that it has on civic participation in elections of all levels of government. Now, Claire Hoy in this book, Margin of Error, talks about a very interesting coalition between the pollsters and the media that I'd like to bring to your attention. No other group in society gets the relatively free ride from media scrutiny that pollsters enjoy. This is surely in part because the two crafts are sharing the same bed. A self-inflicted conflict of interest the media would not tolerate under any other circumstances. If a newspaper or a TV station hires a pollster, the results of the pollster's work by definition are big news for that newspaper or TV station, not subject to normal journalistic scrutiny. Now, there's a relationship, as we see from this quote from Claire Hoy, between the pollsters and the media. In fact, you could call them the Pied Piper pollsters. And Claire Hoy quotes, "Goldfarb, not guts, had divined the rout. Such is the paramountcy of today's political pollsters that they have become, in effect, partisan Pied Pipers, playing their tunes on the scientific instruments of random samples, clusters, margin of error, and weighting, enticing our political leaders like the rats of Hamelin into an unseemly parade to the polls and beyond. Polling methodology has replaced ideology as the new god of politics." So in this topic of the pollster and the media and how it affects federal elections in particular, there's two major views that I'd like to highlight. Pollsters in the media choose which polls to quote. They are addicted by the power and ability to manipulate the masses in the direction they want them to go. Or the second view, how about the masses themselves? How about the individuals that comprise those masses? The masses themselves may be seeking a diversion from the hardships of living life by their own will. Call upon the media to provide them with elusive showmanship by which personal responsibility in life can be divested or forgotten. Now, when we think in terms of communication, we're generally thinking about two-way communication. But is that really true about the media that we are exposed to in a federal election? What in fact is the media giving to us, and what do we return to it? Is the media in fact speech without response? What if the media's actual modern day effect was to manufacture non-communication? If in fact communication is defined as a two-way exchange. Now, this effect of two-way communication that we should be getting from our media, it's quite different. What if we're actually forbidden to give feedback to the media in the mass medium? Most mass media in our age forbids a response, thus rendering the possibility of exchange impossible. The facts are brutal. power in a society can be hijacked by him who gives, and to whom no return can be made. It is a monopoly designated to profit one side, and it throws the social democratic process out of balance. So what's happening during the federal election with the media, what we're getting on the election? In this one, we supposedly have a three-way race that's been tight for over a month and a half. And yet, what's really happening to our viewpoints? People can begin an election with a very definite opinion of a leader or a policy from personal convictions. But with the progressive battering of opinion polls, that clear vision can be crowded out by pervasive uncertainty. Targeted repetition of polls not only blurs our convictions, it eliminates from the consideration alternate candidates and policy viewpoints. One's original perceptions are seemingly illegitimate and even downright embarrassing to own. So this process of fuzzification of communication during an election by the media is very, very disturbing, and it can result in a new species of uncertainty. This uncertainty is introduced by pollsters during the election. It results not from a lack of true information, but from a severe constriction and amplification of pre-filtered information. Being seduced into the pollster's remanufacture of reality, we fall into the pattern of not knowing who or where we are unless it is verified by the statistics of a poll. So in polling and elections, we become uncertain of our own viewpoints. And we participate as a public in a type of media voyeurism, which includes us as the group. An election run by public opinion polls is a sort of continual voyeurism of the group in relation to itself. The groupthink must know at all times what it wants and what its thoughts are, a sort of decisional hypochondria. In this state, true social conversation ceases. The masses have no opinion of their own, and the media does not truly inform them. The political arena as a public space is effectively destroyed. So in effect, what we see is the shrinking of our democracy, our democratic participation, by the overdominance and even the obliteration of polling during the federal election campaign. For 72 hours before the poll, we're not allowed to have a public opinion poll published in Canada. I personally believe it should be the entire election campaign period. In a way, opinion polling is a symbolic murder of the political class. Unconsciously, the masses can derive pleasure by the malicious foretelling of the polls, which throw all real individual perceptions into uncertainty and chaos. On the other hand, this is why elections are so emotionally draining on the public. All sense of stability is continuously plucked from under our noses by the next poll. Many whose emotional energy is spent on elections of the past drop out of the process completely and never vote. Others are still going to reluctantly trudge to the polls to do their democratic duty, but not with the joy that should be in their hearts. You know, we see here the crest of the nation of Canada, and it says on the bottom in Latin, "From sea to sea." We need something to tie us together better than the manipulations and machinations of the polling companies colluding with the media. Now, to close up our time today on the subject of public polling during an election, I would just like to give two examples. And the first one is going to talk about the analogy of a horse race. and the second is the precocious choices of a clothing designer. First of all, the horse race in a federal election. I wonder if some of you remember the movie that showed about 5 years ago about the horse Secretariat. It is the story of a racehorse in 1973 who won for the first time in 25 years the U.S. Triple Crown. This horse, as portrayed in the movie, ran the first half of the races in the dead last position. Then it would suddenly pull up past all the other horses to take the lead and win. It is a wonderfully inspiring story, and it shows in us the natural excitement of seeing the underdog winning out. This dramatic device is used in all sorts of theater as well, and I suggest a dramatic comeback from behind can excite people in the political arena just as much. The question is did it happen naturally or was it contrived? Most of these federal election races by polls are contrived horse races, and we have to take a look at what's happening when we're watching and reading these polls. Moral law, which God says is written in our hearts, has a decree to know yourself and to know your own will and desire. We can only do this by submission to God, for He has told us that the heart of man is desperately wicked. Who can really know it? Compassion urges us to enlighten the superstitions of the masses by revealing all trickery. But then the mass must cooperate by owning up to the responsibility that inevitably comes when they are untricked. So the masses can back away from a massive devolution of exercising their will, as we see in today's polling environment, and they can trust the pollsters to do this duty. Or will they turn and prefer not to delegate responsibilities to someone else? Our second example here is a designer of clothes back several hundred years ago named Beau Brummell. He was an English fashion designer in England and was reported to have taken 5 hours to dress himself in the morning every day. He had a servant for just such a problem of indecision. Before a splendid landscape dotted with beautiful lakes, he turned to his valet to ask him, "Which lake do I prefer?" The masses can in fact be very snobbish, acting as Brummell did, delegating in a sovereign manner the faculty of choice to someone else by a sort of game of irresponsibility, a game of ironic challenge, a sovereign lack of will, of secret ruse. So folks, in Calgary Heritage and throughout Canada, what is it? The Medusa media that fascinates and manipulates the masses? Or the media dancing to the bidding of the masses in hiding the truth? Or is it both? Let's break the trend and let's be Canadians that will guard our land, the true north, strong and free. So that's just one of the many issues in this federal campaign. I do ask for your vote on October 19th. I'm Larry Heather, the Independent for Calgary Heritage.